Mr. President, I'm very happy to be here this afternoon with the most excellent ranking member of the Commerce Committee, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson of Texas. And we lay down our transportation bill, and in so doing, we say that our transportation system is at a crossroads and not a comfortable one. For decades, the Federal Aviation Administration has done an excellent job of operating the world's most complex airline system. Nobody close. The system has served us very well. Not only is it the safest airspace system in the world, it's a critical component of the national economy. I cannot understate the importance of a vibrant and strong aviation system. It's fundamental to our nation's long-term growth, from the largest cities to the very smallest of towns, because it connects our citizens and it connects our businesses with the global economy. Increasingly, however, our air transportation system and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, they're strained beyond capacity. Our skies and airports have become plagued with congestion and delay, and what's more, on a pretty regular basis. Over the past decade, we have seen passengers delayed for hours on runways, and we hear about it. During peak times, such as the holidays, the system is often paralyzed, stopped. Disruptions at just one key airport, maybe JFK, maybe O'Hare, maybe Los Angeles. Any one of those places can quickly cascade throughout the entire system, should they be in trouble. With airline capacity cuts, these delays can easily extend to days for passengers that cannot find flights with empty seats because the capacity has been reduced. Our constituents are frustrated about flying, and frankly, rightly so. When our economy recovers, and I believe that growth has slowly begun, we shall see, congestion and delay will only get worse. The FAA predicts that commercial air traffic will increase by nearly 50% over the next decade. Put that in other terms, from our current level of 700 million passengers a year, it'll be well over 1 billion passengers per year. In a complex system as ours, everything has to work. So the possibility of a meltdown of the air traffic control system may in fact become a reality, and this will put passenger safety at extreme risk. These are not only troubling signs, there are more. While aviation has an excellent safety record, as I've indicated, the Federal Aviation Administration and the industry's focus on safety and vigilance in maintaining it as the highest priority have come into question of safety. The grounding of thousands of aircraft throughout the system in 2008 raised questions about the quality of airline maintenance practices and the FAA's ability to provide sufficient oversight of air carriers. The tragic accident of Flight 3407 has exposed problems with pilot training, crew fatigue, and the ability of the industry to assure the traveling public that there is one level of safety throughout the entire system, and that does not exist. For all these reasons, I stand here along with my distinguished colleague and encourage my colleagues in as strong a fashion as I can possibly muster to move forward and pass S1451, to wit, the FAA Air Transportation Modernization and Safety Improvement Act. I will only say that once. I want to spend a few minutes discussing how and why we have made so little progress in addressing the issues facing our nation's aviation system. In 1999 and 2000, the aviation system was experiencing the worst congestions and delays in its history. There was indeed a growing recognition that fundamental change was needed. Nonetheless, I worked with Senator Lott to author Vision 100, in effect, the 2003 FAA Reauthorization Bill. This bill laid the foundation to build a modern, digital, satellite-based air traffic control system. We created the Joint Planning and Development Office and authorized a significant increase in FAA's capital budget to meet these specific air traffic control modernization needs. A lot of what I say will be based on that. An increase based upon the administration's own budget request. But instead of investing in the system in 2004, 2005, and 2006, the previous administration proposed dramatic cuts in the FAA's facilities and equipment, the F&E account, the accounts that fund air traffic control modernization. The urgency of 2000 understandably, but regrettably, waned as air traffic fell after 9/11. Today, we find ourselves in a similar situation. The recession has prevented widespread delay, temporarily. We must not let this temporary reprieve keep us from taking action to address these concerns once again. Our economy has begun, as I indicated, to slowly turn around, and I'm confident that demand for air travel will soon begin to grow. If we do not act quickly, our system will simply not have the capacity to cope with the growth in demand. That's where you get in trouble. I believe that everyone in aviation recognizes the need to modernize our national air transportation system in order to meet the growth in passenger traffic. In addition to creating much more capacity, a new satellite-based ATC system, air traffic control system, will allow airplanes to move more efficiently by taking more direct routes, being able to be closer to each other but without danger. These improvements will save our economy billions of dollars annually. Most importantly, the next generation air transportation system, which we refer to as NextGen, will dramatically improve the safety of air transportation by providing pilots and air traffic controllers with better situational awareness. They will be able to see other aircraft and detailed weather maps in real time. President Obama clearly recognized the value of investing in our air transportation system, and this is, in fact, reflected in his fiscal year 2011 budget request. The administration has proposed spending a total of $1.1 billion in fiscal 2011 on NextGen program, which is more than a 30% increase. That is not in line with the so-called freeze. So it's a 30% increase over 2010. We oversee all of transportation, trains, cars, airplanes, trucks, whatever you have. And I would just say at this point, for the record, that the same financial requests or needs for the Surface Transportation Board, which interacts with railroads and shippers, has not been increased sufficiently. It's at $31 million, and it needs to be closer to 44. These efforts, however, are only the first steps of a long journey. Modernizing the ATC system will require a sustained focus and substantial resources. S1451 takes concrete steps to make sure that the FAA accelerates the NextGen, that's the modern system, programs, and that the agency implements modernization efforts in an effective and efficient manner over the long run. The FAA estimates that NextGen will cost the agency $20 billion through 2025, and the airlines another $20 billion in aircraft equipage, how they, as an individual airplane, responds and reacts to that system so it can work. I have worked with Senators Inouye and Baucus to reach a deal that I believe moves us in the right direction. S. 1451, the bill under discussion, will create a new sub-account with the Aviation Trust Fund to fund FAA's modernization efforts. This modernization sub-account will dedicate $500 million annually to NextGen efforts. I appreciate the hard work of my colleagues in this provision to develop it, to make it come possible. Safety. Now, I'd like to spend some time talking about the highest priority in aviation, and that's called safety. Statistically, the U.S. has the safest air transportation system in the world. I indicated that, but statistics don't tell you the whole story. It's been a little more than a year since the tragic crash of Flight 3407 in Buffalo, New York, took the lives of 50 people. It is clear from the National Transportation Safety Board investigation that we need to take serious steps to improve pilot training, address flight crew fatigue, to make the cockpit isolated from extraneous conversation, and reform air carrier employment practices. I commend Senator Dorgan in particular for the work he has done to promote the safety in the aftermath of this accident. He has attached himself to this cause ferociously. The committee's work has prompted the FAA to initiate a number of activities to improve aviation safety. The agency has been able to get many air carriers to make voluntary commitments to implement important safety measures, and the agency is committed to issue new regulations on flight and duty time limitations in coming months. Despite this progress, our work remains far from complete. We must also make certain that the FAA remains as vigilant on other safety priorities, the oversight of airline operations, and the maintenance, reducing runway incursions, and air traffic controller staffing issues. Just as with modernization, we must make sure that the FAA has the tool and the resources to accomplish these safety objectives. I'm especially proud of the safety title that we have developed, included in this Bill 1451. This title will do the following, in part. Address pilot fatigue by mandating the FAA revise flight and duty time limitations based on the latest and scientific research. Ensure one level of safety exists throughout the commercial aircraft operations by requiring that all carriers adopt aviation safety standards. The bill also requires stronger safety oversight of foreign repair stations, which is a very controversial subject. They're a relatively small percentage of air maintenance. Most of it is done in this country, but there is some argument as to how well it's done overseas. These are critical measures that will help us identify safety issues and prevent problems before they occur, and this is the best way to address safety. A word on community air service. The state I come from is not large. In fact, it's small, and it's rural, but it's important, and it's a good place. We need to keep America's small communities connected to the rest of the world. If one lives in a rural state or in a rural part of a rural state, one is no less important if one lives on Fifth Avenue in New York City. The nature of the people is the same, the entrepreneurship may be the same, but access to international aviation or transcontinental aviation is not the same. Now, the continuing economic crisis has hit the United States airline industry very, very hard. They're in and out of bankruptcy. We've all read about that. They're cutting back on things that they offer, that they used to offer in flight and don't now. And we grump about it, but there's a reason that they do that, so I don't grump about it. And this affects the future of hundreds of rural communities across our country. In their effort to cut costs, air carriers have drastically reduced service to small or isolated communities. From a business point of view, I guess that makes sense. From my policy point of view, that doesn't make sense, and it's not fair. They are the first routes to go, the rural ones, and they go in tough economic times, and that's where we are right now. The reduction or elimination of air service has a devastating effect on the economy of a community. Having adequate air service is not just a matter of convenience, but also a matter of economic survival. Without access to reliable air service, no business is willing to locate their operation in these areas of the country, no matter what the attractive quality of life. Airports are economic engines that attract critical new development opportunities and jobs. The federal government needs to provide additional resources and tools for small communities to help them attract adequate air service. My legislation does this, our legislation does this, by building on existing programs and strengthening them. Authorizing funding for the Essential Air Service Program is increased to $175 million annually. The bill also extends the Small Community Air Service Development Program, incredibly important for small airports. This program has provided dozens of communities with the resources necessary to attract and retain air service. In conclusion, when I began work on this bill, I had 4 simple goals. 1, take steps to address the critical safety concerns. That was always number 1, always will be. 2, to establish a roadmap for the implementation of NextGen and accelerate the FAA's key modernization programs. 3, make certain we adequately invest in airport infrastructure. And 4, continue to improve small communities' access to the nation's aviation system. I believe we have worked hard in a truly bipartisan fashion with Senators Dorgan, obviously Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson from Texas, Senator DeMint from South Carolina, to develop a bill that I think advances these goals and which all of my colleagues can support. This bill is not being held up, and there's a reason for that. We worked our problems out early. This bill takes the steps needed to advance the system. The FAA must be provided with the tools, the resources, and the clear direction and deadlines to make sure that the agency provides effective oversight of the aviation industry itself. I think we all recognize that the U.S. must significantly expand the capacity of our nation's air transportation system. There are no quick or easy solutions to the problem. And I believe that our situation is going to get worse before it gets better. But we do have to take the actions that we can right now. We cannot ignore the aviation system anymore. We cannot float on nice memories of a glorious past. The United States is losing its position as the global leader on aviation. The American public is not happy with the aviation system or with us. We must move boldly, just as we have with our investments in high-speed rail, or risk losing our leadership in the world. Given the challenges our nation's aviation system faces, we must act now, Mr. President, to pass S1451, the FAA Air Transportation Modernization and Safety Improvement Act.